Picture this. It's April 17th, 1897, in a quiet little farming town in North Texas. Aurora isn't famous, it isn't bustling, and it certainly isn't the kind of place you'd expect to end up in UFO history books. But on that spring morning, something happened here that people still argue about more than a century later. A cigar-shaped flying object, glowing in the Texas sky, allegedly descended, clipping a windmill and crashing in a fiery explosion. Out of the wreckage, locals claimed they found the body of a pilot. But here's the kicker. According to witnesses, this pilot wasn't human. Now, this isn't just a spooky campfire story. This tale was written up in a real newspaper, the Dallas Morning News, just 2 days later. And if you think Roswell in 1947 was the first UFO crash story, well, Aurora beat it by 50 years. So today, let's dive deep. We're going to break down the Aurora UFO incident, explore the town's history, the possible motives behind the story, the investigations that came later, and, of course, the burning question, was this an alien encounter or one of the greatest hoaxes in Texas folklore? The town of Aurora in 1897. To really understand this story, you need to know about Aurora itself. In the late 1800s, Aurora wasn't thriving. In fact, the town was struggling. A boll weevil infestation had devastated crops. A mysterious fire had wiped out parts of the town. And worst of all, the railroad, which was like the lifeblood of towns back then, had bypassed Aurora. That meant trade, travel, and new settlers were all going somewhere else. By 1897, Aurora was dying. The population had shrunk, businesses were closing, and people were leaving in droves. Imagine being a resident in a town that's slowly fading into obscurity. You'd probably feel desperate to put it back on the map. So, when a bizarre story about a flying airship crashing in town appeared in the newspaper, people later wondered, was this a desperate publicity stunt? Or did something genuinely mysterious happen that day? The airship sightings of 1896 to 1897. Now, here's where things get really interesting. Aurora's crash wasn't an isolated event. All across the U.S. in 1896 and 1897, there were hundreds of reports of mysterious airships flying through the skies. Newspapers from California to Illinois published stories about strange cigar-shaped crafts with bright lights, sometimes even with people on board waving down at farmers. These weren't described as alien ships, more like futuristic human inventions. Remember, this was 6 years before the Wright brothers' first flight in 1903. Back then, the idea of a powered flying machine was still science fiction. So you can imagine the excitement, curiosity, and fear people felt when they thought they saw one. Some historians argue that the Aurora crash was just another entry in this wave of airship mania. But Aurora stands out because, unlike the other sightings, this one involved a crash, wreckage, and a body. The Dallas Morning News report. 2 days later, on April 19th, 1897, the Dallas Morning News published an article titled "A Windmill Demolishes It." The reporter, C. Hayden, described how the airship smashed into Judge Proctor's windmill, exploded into pieces, and left behind both strange metallic debris and a dead pilot. According to the article, the pilot was not an inhabitant of this world. Locals even gave him a Christian burial at the town cemetery. And that's where the legend of the Aurora spaceman really begins. Here's a question for you. Do you think Hayden was honestly reporting what locals believed, or was he spinning a wild story to sell newspapers? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because this is the heart of the mystery. The alien burial in Aurora Cemetery. The burial is one of the creepiest details. The townspeople supposedly gave the little being a proper funeral service and buried him in Aurora Cemetery. For decades, there were claims of a headstone marking the grave, with a crude drawing of a flying saucer on it. But here's the twist. That headstone is gone. Some say it was stolen in the 1970s. Others say the Cemetery Association quietly removed it to stop people from digging around. To this day, people still visit the cemetery looking for the alien's grave, but the exact spot remains unmarked. Imagine walking through those quiet cemetery rows, knowing that somewhere beneath your feet could be the remains of a visitor from another world. Creepy, right? Skeptics fight back. Not everyone bought the story. In fact, one of Aurora's own residents, Etta Piguet, told reporters in the 1970s that the whole thing was a hoax. She said Judge Proctor never even had a windmill, and that Hayden, the reporter, made up the story to give Aurora a little publicity. If you think about it, that makes sense. The town was dying, and what better way to put Aurora on the map than with a sensational UFO story? But then again, if it was all made up, why did so many people swear they saw the wreckage and the grave marker? This is where Aurora's story starts to feel less like a simple hoax and more like a mystery that keeps pulling you deeper. Strange debris in the haunted well. Here's where it gets even weirder. Decades later, a man named Brawley Oates bought the property where the crash supposedly happened. On that land was a well where locals believed the wreckage had been dumped. Oates claimed that after drinking the water, he developed severe arthritis, which he blamed on contamination from alien debris. Eventually, the well was sealed with concrete, supposedly trapping whatever was inside forever. Imagine if scientists ever got permission to drill into it. What would they find? Just rusty metal scraps from farm equipment? Or something out of this world? Modern investigations. Over the years, UFO researchers have tried to investigate. In the 1970s, a TV crew from In Search of came to Aurora. In the 2000s, the Sci-Fi Channel's UFO hunters even used ground-penetrating radar in the cemetery. They claimed they found anomalies in the soil that suggested a disturbed grave. But every time researchers requested permission to exhume the alien's grave, the Aurora Cemetery Association refused. Their reasoning? To protect the dignity of the dead. Fair enough, but that means the truth remains buried, literally. Connections to Roswell. People often compare Aurora to Roswell, New Mexico. Roswell happened in 1947, 50 years later, and became the most famous UFO crash story in history. But think about it. Aurora's story had almost the same ingredients. Strange wreckage, a non-human body, a secret burial. The difference is that Roswell had the U.S. military involved, while Aurora was just a sleepy farm town with no resources to investigate. If Aurora happened today, you better believe the government would have been swarming that crash site within minutes. Could it have been something else? Let's pause for a second and think critically. What could this have been if it wasn't an alien ship? 1. A misidentified balloon. Balloons were around in the 1800s, and a damaged or experimental balloon could have easily been mistaken for an airship. 2. A newspaper hoax. Sensational stories sold papers. Simple as that. 3. A desperate town gimmick. With Aurora fading, maybe locals leaned into the story to spark interest. 4. Something real. And of course, there's always the possibility that something genuinely unexplainable did happen that day. So what do you think? If this wasn't a UFO, what's the most likely explanation? The legacy of Aurora. Today, Aurora fully embraces its alien legend. The town has a historical marker telling visitors about the legendary crash. People come from all over to see the cemetery, the well, and the little Texas town that might have hosted Earth's first UFO crash. Whether you believe it or not, Aurora is a reminder of how stories, true or not, can shape the identity of a place forever. Final thoughts. So, did an alien crash in Aurora, Texas in 1897? We may never know for sure. Maybe it was a hoax cooked up by a clever reporter. Maybe it was just another chapter in the airship craze sweeping America at the time. Or maybe, just maybe, Aurora really did host the first cosmic visitor long before Roswell ever made headlines. The mystery is still there, buried in that little cemetery, sealed in that concrete well, and kept alive in the hearts of believers and skeptics alike. What do you think? Was Aurora the site of the first UFO crash in history, or just a ghost story that got out of hand? Let me know your thoughts down below. And if you want me to cover more forgotten UFO mysteries from history, hit that like button and subscribe, because trust me, we've only scratched the surface.